Good morning. So we have been talking about the inception of Hindi films. We have been also talking about the great history of our Indian cinema with particular reference to Hindi cinema. Now, some of the films that we talked about were, cinema when it started, when it was at its earliest stages, at its beginning. And we have been talking about silent films such as the very first film that was made in India, that is Raja Harishchandra by Dada Saheb Phalke. Then we have been talking about the first talkie film that was Alam Ara. And we also talked about a series of other films that have become like historical landmarks in our great cultural heritage. Films such as Devdas, Alam Ara, and Achut Kanya, many others like that. So these are the films that have informed and shaped our cinema. Now, what do you understand when I say something like these films, these early films have informed our cultural heritage, our subsequent cinema, or our popular imagination? What I meant is that these films created a sort of template for, it won't be very far-fetched to say that these films created the kind of cinema that we were going to have. So, of course, we were talking about love stories and the predominance of the musical in our cinema, which still exists today. I mean, some of the greatest hits in recent times particularly are musical love stories. So the template has been set at the outset. Now, another important factor is that these films also told us how to view, and this is important, and I want you to pay attention to this, that how to view our men and women, okay, through the lens of cinema. So an idealized hero, was also an ideal man. An idealized heroine was also an ideal woman. So this is the way cinema creates certain kinds of stereotypes, and that has remained. Okay, we want a woman or a man to be of certain kind because that's what history teaches us, and also cinema teaches us. And what is cinema but after all, it's a reinterpretation of our cultural tropes. And our perceptions are influenced by the way actors and actresses behave and are represented on screen. So this is important to understand, that representations shape our perspectives of how we view relationships, gender, and attitudes. So these early films sort of shaped the way our worldview was formed. Unfortunately, several of these films, particularly Alam Ara and Achut Kanya, they do not really exist in the way they should have been. So they have been more or less destroyed. There is a place called NFAI in Pune that is National Film Archives of India. So due to perhaps some accidents, or perhaps these films are very expensive to maintain, we have lost a very important aspect of our cultural heritage, and of course we mourn the loss of these films in their original state. So from those early films, now let's move on to one of the key films that has come to shape what we call the modernity. Okay, so modernity in Hindi cinema and how it all began. Well, this movie can be called at the center of the canon. So I'm talking about Awara, which was released in 1951, one of the most premier Indian films that found global acceptance. The film was produced and directed by Raj Kapoor, and was written by Khwaja Ahmad Abbas, K.A. Abbas, the great socialist writer. So the theme or the story deals with the idea of nature versus nurture, and this is again a recurring pattern in most Hindi films, nature versus nurture. It questions the premise that the son of a criminal would be criminal by nature and vice versa. Now, it is important to understand that this film was made at the peak of Nehruvian socialism. So, it struck a chord with the model of a Nehruvian socialism that was at the core of our nationalistic ideology at that time. And then we have to also understand that the film was extremely popular because of its ideology. In Russia and in Turkey, the film was remade as with the title Avare. Raj Kapoor patented the Chaplinist character with this film, you know, the lovable tramp, the lovable vagabond, the innocent tramp. Now, Avara is known for its music also. There is a grand set piece of a dream sequence which I urge you to watch. And perhaps, you know, that's something that must have been extremely important at that time technically, and a very significant contribution. The film today, of course, is remembered for the great chemistry between Raj Kapoor and Nargis, its song, its musical sequences, a story of class differences. Interestingly, a very young Shashi Kapoor played the part of the little boy who grows up to become Raj Kapoor, and Raj Kapoor's father, the on-screen father, was played by his real father, the great Prithviraj Kapoor. So 3 generations of Kapoors in one film. Raj Kapoor's brand of innocent tramp or vagabond persona was further developed in Shri 420 or Mr. 420. Now you must remember that it's one of the greatest emblematic shots ever when Raju, who is at the crossroads and he's a country boy moving towards Bombay, and he comes across this milestone, Bombay 420 miles. So this means that the template is, or the stage is set, that we are looking at the dichotomy, the binary between the country life, which is innocent, symbolized by people like Raju, and the city life, which is corrupt and fraud. That is 420. Yeah? Indian Penal Code gives us this section 420, which suggests fraud and cheat. So this is Bombay for you. So he is a country boy traveling to Bombay in search of a living, and he comes in contact with the pure innocent heroine, very suggestively titled Vidya. That is Nargis's character. She's a school teacher. So again, we are talking about an idealized character. You know, she is Vidya. Her name suggests learning, okay, education, guidance, and she runs a small school, and where she is molding the young children. So again, the idea that children are the future citizens of India, and this is how a good girl should be like. But Raju is not after a simple life. He is soon seduced by the excesses of city life, and the character who lures him away from Vidya, played by Nadira, is again very significantly called Maya, that is wealth or illusion. So Vidya versus Maya. So again, we are talking about the binary tropes. This has always been a key feature of cinema. We have been talking about the language of cinema, and here we are talking about symbolism. So one character symbolizes everything that is good, and another character represents everything that is bad. So the good versus bad. And then you may also want to recall F.W. Murnau's Sunrise at this point. Again, the same idea is created, good versus evil. So good country life represented by good people, good wife, and the bad country, but the bad city girl, the bad life, the corrupt life of city, as represented by the femme fatale. So here too Maya is nothing other than or more than a femme fatale. And then you remember her slinky gowns, her long cigarette holder, her hairdo, her makeup, everything is over the top. And again, the film then becomes Raju's struggle to completely succumb to a wealthy lifestyle earned by dishonesty and his desire to save his integrity. At the end, of course, he is saved by Vidya and they live happily ever after, a life full of morals and integrity. So that is the story of this immensely popular film. And we all know that the film, the popularity of the film was not just restricted to India, but also many of these Asian countries as well, and in Russia. And the song Mera Juta Hai Japani, of course, doesn't need any introduction. So here is a clipping where I would like you to watch a memorable scene from Shri 420. Another great film that has captured the attention of the world was Mother India. Now, the title of the film was taken as a counterpoint to American author Catherine Mayo's book Mother India, where India or Indian culture and religion and heritage are sort of vilified. That's what most people felt. So many people were offended by the representation of India. Now, this film, this epic film directed and produced by Mehboob Khan, shot in his great Mehboob studio, was a remake of the director's earlier film Aurat, which was a 1940 movie. Mother India is a story of a village woman named Radha, played by Nargis, who tills her farm, and once her husband, who loses both his arms in an accident, he abandons the family and walks away, and then we don't see him anymore. Okay, just like the movie we have been talking about, Diwar. Okay, so the father, shamed and unable to look after his family, he just takes the easy way out of abandoning the family, and it's left to the mother to raise her family, and also her struggle to cultivate the land, feed her children, and also survive the machinations of the evil money lender, as played by Kanhaiya Lal. Now, symbolically, the film represents India as a nation in the wake of independence and refers to a very strong sense of nationalism. So, Nargis is not just a mother to her own children, she is Mother India. She represents the Earth Mother. She is what an ideal woman should be like. Now, the construct has been criticized by several film scholars that what we find is that development comes at a very great cost in this film, at the cost of great human suffering and misery. So this is an idea that we have to look at, and it's the woman who suffers constantly, and therefore she is idealized. So those of you who are interested in looking at the representation of woman in on Indian screen, they have to bear this point in mind. So the film starred the great Nargis along with Rajkumar, who played her husband, and Sunil Dutt and Rajendra Kumar, they played her sons. Interestingly, the director wanted to cast Dilip Kumar in the double roles of both husband and her son, but then this was ruled out. Particularly, Nargis did not support the idea, the assumption being that the audience would reject this premise or this kind of pairing outright, since Dilip Kumar and Nargis had played the lead role, the romantic couple, in a number of films such as Jogan and Andaz before that. Andaz again is a very important film to understand the concept of the forces of modernity versus tradition on Indian screen. Now, again, as I have been talking about, the film Mother India is a tribute to the resilience of the Indian woman, and Radha, as played by Nargis, symbolizes Shakti, the Earth Mother, who is marked or chosen to root out evil and lead us towards salvation and redemption. Okay, at the end, the mother kills, she guns her rebellious sundown in order to restore harmony in the village. So it's duty over, choosing duty over personal happiness, and that's the moral of the story. So the ideal mother character became a template for a screen mother. Consider, for instance, the mother figure as played by Nirupa Rai in Diwar and Reema Lagoo in Vastav. Mahesh Manjrekar directed and Sanjay Dutt is starring. Mother India was shot in Mehboob Studios and also on locations in the villages of Maharashtra, Gujarat and Uttar Pradesh. It is said that for the flood scene, cameraman Faridun Irani went to Uttar Pradesh that witnessed the great flood in 1959 and shot some footage, and this material was later used in the film. Another key point of the film was its music by Naushad, and Naushad introduced the Western kind of symphony here, the Western classical music and Hollywood style orchestra to Hindi films. The film, as we are all aware of, generated high revenue and is considered a cultural classic. We move on to talk about one of the most influential directors of all time now. Yes, I am talking about Guru Dutt. Guru Dutt, who is credited with making India's most socially conscious films such as Pyasa, Kagaz Ke Phool, Baazi, Chaudhary Ka Chand and several others. He also is associated with light-hearted, breezy films such as Aar Paar and Mr. and Mrs. 55. Aar Paar is credited or especially recalled today for the kind of Bambaiya language it employed. It was the first of its kind to use a variety of the typical Bambaiya language that we today know and that we came later to associate with actors such as Amitabh Bachchan, Mithun Chakravarti and Govinda. But Guru Dutt's Aar Paar was the film that started it all. Aar Paar was also shot to a great extent on locations. Guru Dutt gave breaks to several important artists, and one artist that all of us revere and love still with us is the great Waheeda Rahman, who was introduced in the Guru Dutt produced CID, a movie he produced and was directed by Raj Khosla, also starring Dev Anand. Guru Dutt's cinema is particularly remarkable for its extraordinary mise-en-scène, which gelled perfectly with his layered screenplays. Like a true auteur. Now here is one director who we can very safely call an auteur. He is someone who deserves to be called an auteur, almost like Orson Welles of our country. So he is an author who collaborated several times with, frequently with several artists, music directors and technicians. His films are immensely watchable for their song picturization. I would like you to watch this particular song from Jal, starring Dev Anand and Geeta Bali. Please note down the link here. Now, talking about Guru Dutt's one of the most remarkable and memorable film, Pyasa. The film is based on poet Sahir Ludhianavi's personal experiences. Sahir Ludhianavi is another great lyricist with whom Guru Dutt often collaborated. Pyasa is a love story between a poet and a prostitute with a heart of gold. So again, consider the template that was first suggested by Devdas and still continues. It is also about the struggle between crass commercialism and idealism. Pyasa is a must watch for most lovers of Hindi films, and so is Guru Dutt's most ambitious work of all time, which did not do very well when it was first released, that is Kagaz Ke Phool, and which also has the distinction of being India's first cinemascope film in 70 mm. It is a story, and we can detect personal autobiographical touches here. A story of a film director who is going through a troubled marriage, his failed marriage, and then his romantic relationship with a poor girl who he raises into a big star. Soon he starts losing his stronghold and reduced to nothingness. He is reduced to poverty, failure. He suffers a lot and at the end dies ignominiously. So that is Guru Dutt's take on the film industry and its fickleness. So the movie, of course, did not, as we all know, did not do too well when it was first released. It was considered way too depressing. Okay, but today it is remembered for its stunning visuals and extraordinary mise en scène. Sahab Baby Aur Ghulam is another movie produced by Guru Dutt and directed by his frequent collaborator Abrar Alvi. The film starred Guru Dutt, Meena Kumari, Rahman and Wahida Rahman, and is based on a Bengali novel set in the pre-independence feudal Bengal. It tells the story of a servant Bhutnath, as played by Guru Dutt, who narrates the story in flashback. The story concerns Choti Bahu, as played by Meena Kumari, who is a neglected wife of an aristocrat, as played by Rahman. So it's all about the decadent feudal Bengal, which is coming to an end. You know, at the same time you have the Brahma Samaj movement, the forces of liberalism, modernity. At the same time, on the other hand, you have the decadent and the morally corrupt values of the aristocrats. So the film has to be watched for the unique atmosphere of decadence that it created, as well as for the representation of Choti Bahu, that is Meena Kumari's greatest performance ever, and her longing for love and sexual needs. It is a tragic yet fascinating story of downward spiral of a particular class of society, as represented by the twin characters of Rahman and Meena Kumari. Although it's a movie that can be appreciated all round, for it has first-rate acting, it has wonderful music, it has great sets and brilliant cinematography. Yet one thing that stays with you forever is Meena Kumari's performance as Choti Bahu. You have to watch the movie for its representation of women, which can be seen as quite progressive according to those times. In the 50s we are talking about, where the director had the courage to portray a woman with portray a woman who longs for sexual satisfaction. Okay, and this was something that was very novel, very new to the Indian screen. From movies, let's talk about the musical scene, and the 50s are also called the musical golden age of Hindi films. The coming of musically inclined filmmakers such as Guru Dutt, V. Shantaram, Raj Kapoor, along with Raj Khosla and Shakti Samant. Okay, all this ensured not only quality music, because these directors had a keen eye for music, but it also led to branding of music, and thus camps were formed. Now camps are like people who regularly work with one another. We are not now necessarily talking about auteurism, but are talking about camps where stars and music directors would feel comfortable only with each other or one another, and would rarely would it happen that they would work with someone outside their comfort zone. So let's consider, for example, Dilip Kumar's association with Naushad and Mohammad Rafi, Raj Kapoor's well-known association with Mukesh and Shankar Jaikishan, and Deva Anand's memorable association with S.D. Burman and Rafi and Kishore Kumar. Some of the greatest musical scores of Hindi cinema have been produced during the 50s, And these three stars, the great trio of Raj Kapoor, Devanand and Dilip Kumar, are at the center of this canon, the great musical age. Of course, we have people like Naushad, Shankar Jaikishan and S.D. Burman also. Wonderful music, and music critics, music scholars would regard the period as the peak of the musical scene in the history of Hindi cinema. Mughal-e-Azam 1960 is a period epic directed by K. Asif, and it's a magnum opus starring Prithviraj Kapoor, Dilip Kumar and Madhubala. Interestingly, the film is also remembered today for the longest gestation period for any film. There were plans to launch this film in 1944 by K. Asif, but it got its eventual completion and release only in 1960. The film went terribly over budget, largely because of the Sheesh Mahal sequence, and some of you who would be interested in cinematography and mise-en-scène, they should watch this film for the great song Jab Pyar Kiya To Dar Na Kya and the Sheesh Mahal sequence, and which was very difficult for the cinematographer and the director to capture on a screen because of the complexity of the sets. Here is a great scene from Mughal-e-Azam. Please watch it and come back to me. Okay. So welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the scene. We'll continue with this lecture in our next class. Thank you.